The Nuggets had a veteran to help with the playoff push, plus why Jokic flops. I'll tell you why on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day, being an everydayer, joining us Monday through Friday and making us your first listen. We do appreciate each and every one of you, especially those who have joined up for the Everydayers Club, where you get bonus content, shows, written content like the scouting report, all sorts of cool stuff. Plus, you can join the Discord and join lots of Nuggets fans discussing all things NBA and Nuggets on the daily. Just go to lockedonnuggets.supercast.com, supercast.com, and sign up to be an everydayer. There's a link in the episode description here on this pod. This is the 10-0 run, which is something we're starting on Locked On Nuggets. These are going to be shorter episodes, and we won't do these every day, but they'll kind of fill in. Our goal is to be able to make sure that you've got Nuggets content in your podcast inbox or on your YouTube feed about every 12 hours, Monday through Friday. And then also we'll do shows on the weekend because we're sickos. So that's kind of the goal. But these are going to be shorter shows. We will have ads in them, but they are going to be shorter shows that you can expect. And they're going to be solo episodes from me or Swipa or Ryan. On today's show, I'm going to talk about Tyus Jones, why the Nuggets added him, what impact we really think that he can have. And then also I'm going to talk a little bit about the controversy over Jokic flopping. Let's start by talking about Tyus Jones. So Tyus Jones, the synopsis here is Nuggets add low mistake backup point guard. Everyone has kind of thought that backup point guard was a missing ingredient for the Nuggets in terms of being able to have another creator or ball handler or someone who can create offense for them. Now, I think Jalen Pickett's actually done a pretty good job in this role. I don't think that Jalen Pickett's been an atrocious backup point guard. I think if I probably were to rank them all, which I have not, if we go down the list, I'm probably going to wind up being like, okay, he's probably somewhere in the backup point guard range between 20 and 30. And that's like, oh, that's not good. Well, it's not terrible either. Like, this is a low bar for a second round pick. And I don't think what you're really trying to do is you're trying to not get past that 30 point where it's like, all right, he belongs as like a 30, one of the 30 backup point guards in the league. Is Tyus an improvement? I honestly don't know. I think it's pretty close because Tyus has really come with some issues lately. One of the key problems that's really hard to tell here, and this is a good indication of how I use stats all the time, and I will tell you very honestly that there's so much that stats do not capture. The problem, I think, is that when people are just like, see, it doesn't capture everything, so you can't use it. Nope, that's stupid. That's evidence. You can actually use it. You can examine it. We can make theories. We can actually say, like, well, there's evidence of this, that, and the other. And the one thing I can tell you is that the evidence points to the fact that with Tyus Jones on the floor, your team doesn't work. It doesn't win its minutes. That's been a problem with both the Washington Wizards and then when he was traded to Dallas Mavericks. It's been a problem for them that basically, and then with the Orlando Magic, it was that way too. When he was on the court, the team was notably worse. Some of this may have to do with the fact that small guards in the NBA just can't really exist anymore. It's a real problem. You have to be Jalen Brunson surrounded by Wingstop for it to be like, yeah, it's probably okay. And even then, a lot of people have questions about whether the Knicks can defend at an adequate level. I just don't really know whether or not this is actually a point of that we can kind of point to and go, that's the reason why. It could just be that he joined a Wizards team that was tanking, a Magic team that clearly has more problems than him, and then a Dallas Mavericks team that is obviously tanking. We haven't seen Tyus in a high stakes environment really since he was in Memphis. That was the last time that Tyus was part of a winning culture, a winning team. I know that you could say Memphis didn't have a winning culture. They were successful the years that he was there. And so there's not really an argument otherwise for why Tyus may not be, like you can't really argue Tyus has been in a good position is kind of what I'm trying to say. So if that's the case, Nino says that Tyus is also a pretty good 3-point shooter. Historically, he has been. And that's, kind of how it is. You now have Tyus and you have KJ Simpson. So you have kind of these different options you can kind of go to. The question I have, though, is a lot of Nuggets fans are like, well, when they pressure Jamal, you need someone to break the pressure. Like, that's not why Tyus was brought in. If the Thunder are running full court press and trapping Jamal, you're not going to be like, get in there, Tyus. That's not what's going to happen. And so if that's not what's going to happen with Tyus, then, that doesn't really solve your key problem, which is you need somebody to take the pressure off of these high leverage situations. Okay. That's a problem that's going to have to be solved by Christian Brown, especially Peyton Watson. especially Peyton Watson and Aaron Gordon. Like, that's going to have to be there. Like, the guys in the playoff rotation are going to have to be the solve for that. Now, let's say that you're in a first round series and God forbid, knock on wood, Jamal gets an ankle and can't go in game 3 or 4. Okay. Now it's like, all right, you have options. You can go with Jalen Pickett. You can go with KJ Simpson. You can go with Tyus Jones. Now, like, none of these options are good, and they probably would honestly not start them. They would probably just move Peyton into the starting unit, and Peyton would be point guard with Christian and Cam. That is probably what they would go to in that environment. But it does mean that, like, your backup situation is now not completely wrecked. Or if you do decide to start Jalen Pickett because he's been in the system and he has earned minutes and he has started quite a few games this season because of their injuries, you're now no longer like, well, backup point guard is, I don't know. That's what this move is really for. And it's for in the possibility. Let's say that they are able to make a run here. I know, doesn't seem likely, but let's say that they were to make a run here over the next 3 weeks and they get separation from the pack, and it's Thunder, Spurs, a 2-game gap, and then the Nuggets. And the Nuggets kind of go, you know what, we're kind of okay in the 2-3. We don't want to push it. Now you can do things like, we're going to give Jamal the night off here on a back-to-back or a 3rd and 4, or he's just been kind of feeling crappy. We're going to give him the night off here, and we're just going to roll out Jalen and Tyus Jones. You at least now have 2 guys that have played multiple years in the NBA to be able to say, like, all right, we can kind of get through this spot. That's really what you're doing here. It's insurance. You can't really view this as like, oh man, I can't wait for, there's been a lot of like, I can't wait for the Tyus and Val minutes. I'm not going to rule that out either. Okay. Like, it's possible that the Nuggets have a broader plan here, that it's like, no, we think he belongs in the rotation. I would just be surprised, because if that was the case, he probably would have been signed much more immediately. Instead, kind of what we saw is like, they waited, they evaluated, they looked at Lonzo Ball's medicals and were like, ooh, I don't know about that. They passed on power forwards. They passed on Chris Boucher. They were obviously focused in on Chris Middleton, and that makes a lot of sense. Chris would have been phenomenal for this team. Chris is a different level player because Chris is a former all-star, and even though he's well past his prime and pretty washed at this point, he would still be able to give them quality minutes, or at least stabilized minutes. He would have probably minutes that you'd be like, get him off the court, but it would be enough that you could be like, all right, we can survive with this. Now instead you have Tyus, and I think Tyus is mostly like, all right, we didn't get Chris. All right, Tyus works. That's fine. But there's just no real environment I can see where it's like Tyus Jones is expected to be a difference maker, is expected to be in the rotation, that he's expected to make all these plays and be a difference with all these guys. Cody asked, why not Delano Banton, who the Celtics actually released? He's probably going to go back to the G League. The problem, I will tell you, there's probably an issue with Banton that I'm not aware of. I don't know of one, but after how good he was with Portland was still like, yeah, we're all right. We're good. Whenever a guy has as many like fourth quarter performances as he did with the Blazers, and the team is still like, we're good, you should take that as a pretty good warning sign. Instead, people tend to go like, these teams are dumb. Well, no, like, there's usually stuff that you don't know about, either the practice habits, off-court stuff, or whatever. I'm not accusing Delano Banton of that. I'm just telling you that's probably the case. If you're like, why did this happen? That would be my answer, is that there's something that we don't know about what it's like working with him. Because that is a lot of this too, is you are trying to find guys that you're comfortable working with. Now, I think Tyus could be helpful, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's like, oh my gosh, Tyus Jones had a crazy game 5 versus whoever. Those kind of stories happen all the time, and I really like Tyus a lot. But I also am going to set the bar pretty low for what I expect him to give the Nuggets. I do want to make this very clear. There's a question about Niang. I think Niang is an actively harmful player. I don't think it's George's fault. Every time I've watched him play, I have been absolutely livid that he was playing in whatever game that he was in a playoff environment. I do not think George Niang is at all viable. Okay. Now, a lot of talk about Jokic flopping. We're going to get to that coming up on Locked On Nuggets. I want to tell you about Indeed sponsored jobs. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, the inbox is overflowing. The one position you've got to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, and location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. some of the problems now is like if you're hiring for a remote position and one of the search programs is only searching in your area, you're missing out on candidates. What if it's the opposite and you need somebody who can come into the office, but there's remote work in here? I've seen that happen where there's just been confusion based off of the search engine that's used. That's never going to happen with Indeed sponsored jobs. They're going to find you the right candidates with all the qualifications and the right situation for you. And the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. If you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. We're also brought to you today by BetterHelp. You know, March is a time to celebrate women. International Women's Day, and to recognize just how much they carry at work and relationships and families and in all the unseen roles that they step into every day. So it's important for us to be able to be in a position to understand that. And I think this is a pretty big challenge, I think, for a lot of men, is to understand the spaces that women occupy, because it's a lot more complicated than we thought. Like the more that I've learned about this and read about this and talked to my wife about, the more I've really started to understand how many overlapping spaces cause pressure in their lives. And like I've talked to therapists about my ability and how I can better support my wife. Like I've talked about that in therapy, about not just for me, like therapy is not entirely, it doesn't have to be entirely for you. I worked a lot in therapy on how to interact with people better, because I can be, well, a little bit of a JA, and that can cause problems from time to time. And so I've worked on that, and understanding these type of things, I think, helps a lot. Your emotional well-being matters. Find support and feel lighter in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. That's betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. Finally, today we're brought to you by FanDuel. All right, so it's March Madness. Right? We're in March. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. Early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts. There's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. I love conference tournament season. Like, I know everyone loves the tournament, and I do too. It's one of my favorite times of the year is watching all the games. But I also love conference tournament, and there's a lot of value to be found. Once you go searching, you're going to find stuff that's like, oh man, like this team's on a crazy run. They're playing well at the right time. I think playing, peaking at the right time is absolutely a thing in college basketball. You can look around and find the combination of things and get a profit boost instantly to bump up your potential payout. Go save, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. I want to talk about the Jokic flopping thing because it's been a big conversation on the Discord and on Twitter and all these types of things. And there's two arguments that have been found here. Okay. So on the one at this point, I am comfortable saying I used to have to like argue with Ryan about this because like I've seen the slow creep of the grifting and foul baiting in Jokic's game over the last 5 years. And Ryan was like, no, he doesn't do that. And then finally he's like, yeah, okay, he does that. And I don't think it's Ryan's fault. I think it's just like Ryan is a great analyst who's also a fan. And I think that causes, sometimes it's hard to see. I'm also like more attuned to it because it drives me nuts as much as anybody. I used to complain about Manu Ginobili. That's the first guy I remember really flopping where I was like, this is disgusting. And Manu was a killer, but he was also a monster flopper. He was an incredibly annoying flopper. So there's two thoughts on this. One is like friend of the show, Jeff Morton, King of Thornton, kind of talked about is, okay, look, does he flop? Sure. Is it annoying? Yes. But can you blame the guy? Look at how he's being officiated. Look at them hugging. Look at the grabbing him. Look at them hitting him. It's so frustrating. You can't blame him for that. And that's like one view. And I think that most Nuggets fans probably fall into that first category because you love Jokic, because he's the best player in franchise history, one of the best in the world, and the best player that you'll ever see wearing a Nuggets uniform, most likely. gosh, if he's not, then you guys will live a blessed existence. So I understand that view. The other side of this is like, look, what made Jokic special and great was that he controlled the game and focused on the right things. And that's what made him amazing. And that he wouldn't complain about these things and he wouldn't try and exploit the game. And he did play ethical basketball. And I was really proud to be a fan of that. And I think that that's valid too. You know, and one of the people that's been kind of brought up is like over on DMVR, which we're friends with all those people, is Harrison Wynn was calling this out last night. Guys, like Harrison's like one of the biggest like Jokic supporters you're ever going to find, ever. Right? Like that show it's a great show and it's so successful. And those guys are all very much in line. Like our show is much more critical of Nikola than other shows because it's, you know, I'm on here and I'm about what is actually like accurate truth really matters to me. Like that really matters to me. And I try very hard to get outside of my lens as a person that covers the Nuggets and try and talk about the truth, right? And so like, and I call this out consistently with other teams too, is like, I'm not going to put up with Thunder fans making up, like Thunder fans at yesterday wanted to pretend that they had last season. We had all these injuries. We had, look at this, man games lost. And I'm just like, you had really good injury luck last year. You missed you missed your centers for 2 weeks and that sucked. But relative to what we've seen from other teams, you had really good injury luck last year. Shea missed almost no games. Jay Will missed almost no games. Caruso was available. Like you had really good injury luck. This year, the Thunder have had terrible injury luck. So like, I'm going to keep it 100 and I don't know any other way to do this. Like I can't do this the other way. Now, you do have other folks on here on this show, Swipa and Ryan, who are going to be able to give you that kind of perspective. But here's what I will just going to say. I understand the viewpoint of what do you expect him to do? And I do think that Adam's point that he raised on DMVR, and he's continually raised this for the last 5 years, and he's absolutely right about it, that the officials guard smalls and bigs differently is extremely frustrating, and it bothers me personally. You do not get to be like, this is not a foul when a small guy does it to a big guy, and it is a foul when a big guy does it to a big guy or a big guy does it to a small guy. No, if it's a foul, and call it. Quit letting things go because it's a small guy doing this to a larger dude. If you want to let everything go in the post, fine. Then let everything go in the post and allow Jokic to back these dudes into oblivion without getting called for a charge when they throw themselves on the ground. That's inappropriate. Tony says, but your truth isn't the objective truth. You're absolutely right. Like I can be wrong, but I will say that for me, if you're starting from a compromised position of, I want Jokic to be absolved of this and nothing to be wrong with Nikola Jokic, I think it's hard to build a structural case for truth in that matter. Like I'm starting from a position of, I want to talk about what actually is and the reality of things and give appropriate credit and appropriate criticism. And I think that starting from that position is way better. I run into this all the time, which is fans believe I'm biased, but I'm right. And that's like largely what everyone kind of thinks. And they're like, you don't know better. And you know what? You may be right. Maybe I don't know better, but I work really hard to know better. I do a lot of research. I do a lot of studying. I watch a lot of stuff. I know how other teams handle this. I know that Joel Embiid handles this way worse than Jokic does. I know that other guys don't flop as much. I know that Jokic used to not do this as much. And I also do think that some of this is not just the way that they are officiating him. And that's an important point here. Jokic is getting older. He's not old. He's still very much in his prime, but he's getting older. And I have seen consistently players from the time that they turn 27 to the time that they turn 34. There is a transition that happens where it gets harder and harder to keep the energy up because you have played so many freaking minutes of hard basketball. And so you are searching for ways to get through the regular season by taking shortcuts that are still beneficial. And that to me is huge. I just think that there's a level here where it's like, it's easier for me to draw the foul here. It's easier for me to get this call. And you can accept that and be like, that's just him battling what the NBA presents. I've seen that argument too, that like, there's a lot of other people that do this. And I think that that's probably fair. I have always kind of felt that drawing fouls is part of the game of basketball. Like I'm defensive of Dwayne Wade in the 2006 finals. I don't think Wade flopped. Wade drove into contact, drew contact. He fell, but he drew contact. And Jokic, I think, does the same thing. Now, there are tricks now that he does that are exactly a little bit different. And if the real culprit here is the league, because the league has made it to where this is beneficial and what you should do, instead of just being like, hey guys, we're just going to call less fouls. So this is not the path for you to do it. And I do think it's pretty difficult to kind of like get an estimation of what it is. So I think that some of this is simply, I don't blame you if you want to feel like he's getting mauled. He's got a right to do this. He should keep doing it. Jokic did nothing wrong. I also don't think you can blame people for being like, I don't want to see that, man. Like, I get it. If you love Jokic more than you love good basketball, that's pretty consistent. That's normal. That is a totally normal and healthy thing to do. That is like the norm of where we are in society today. I don't think that there's anybody who, I'll say this, like, I don't think there's almost anybody who doesn't now from a star level. Jokic was like the last guy like that I really was like, who doesn't do it is Jokic. And it was really cool covering that guy. But I'm also not going to blame him because of what he's facing, because he does face a worse defensive situation than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And he's gotten beaten up. He has gotten beaten up. That's absolutely true. Jokic takes an absolute beating. Now, as I've pointed out on Twitter and I've shared these clips, like Jokic gives back as much as he takes. Like he beats these teams up too. Like I have clips. I'm doing a whole thing on the Thunder that I'm going to post on the Dever Dig and in our Supercast. To me, Googer says, I mean, if you like OKC being allowed to foul, but SGA getting a soft whistle, is that enjoying good basketball? That's a good question. So I think if you're a Thunder fan and you like being able to play physical and you don't like being, and you like Shai being able to not get called, like that's being a Thunder fan. That's basically what a lot of fans are advocating for, is they want the Thunder way, which is like, we should be able to foul and they shouldn't. That's what every fan wants, because they feel like that's not a foul when it usually is a foul. And that is a foul when it's often the case not a foul. But to me, a lot of these cases, I don't know how you argue that's not a foul on Jokic. I want to talk about this mostly from the perspective of like, this is where the conversation is at. But ultimately, like, look, I don't think that this is going to be a big problem in the playoffs. I think most of this is about Jokic managing the regular season. And I think that when the time comes, he's going to be ready for the moment. Now, last year, I think he was compromised. I thought that he started getting in his head in the Clippers series and it carried all the way through to the Thunder. My big thing is this, guys. As much he could be frustrated as much as he wants, and he can exaggerate things as much as he thinks he should, as long as it's effective. But there's got to be a level at which you are running into negative compounding effects. If you are carrying out this behavior to try and draw calls and not getting them, all you're doing is frustrating yourself more and usually turning the ball over. There's a sequence in the Oklahoma City the first Thunder game where I think it was iHeart hooks him. And so Jokic turns almost completely perpendicular to him, and then falls to the ground trying to draw the foul, and there's no call. And the entire set gets messed up because of that. You're going to say, because it should be called a foul. You're right. You're right. But if it's not, that's over. You're not in that moment going to be, by getting up and yelling, the ref's not going to go, oh, you're right. He's not going to change his mind. This has always been my feeling on complaining to the officials. I do not see it working. I don't see complaining getting more fouls called or fewer ones. It doesn't change anything. It might work on the long term, but I don't think it works on the short term. Let's go do it for Locked On Nuggets. I appreciate you guys being with us. We'll be back tonight for No Jinx, 10:30 Eastern. No, 10:30 Mountain. 10:30 Mountain. Right here at youtube.com/Locked On Nuggets on the live show and in your podcast feed. I hope you guys have a great day. Sign up for the Locked On Nuggets Everydayers Club. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On. I promise I don't hate Jokic. It's okay. Just don't like flopping.